Parenting is hard. It can also be rewarding, but getting through the grind to the good stuff can be a real struggle. And all of us could use some inspiration, encouragement, or just a reminder that we aren't alone on this journey. Sometimes even parents need a timeout.
Hey parents, welcome to Parents Time Out. This is the time during the week where we sit down and we share with other parents, we learn from other parents. And tonight, and I'm Kim Botto. I lead Kids Club at Crossroads, and I'm the mom of 5 and the grandma of 8. If you have kids, you at one time or another have had to talk to them about challenging situations, about things that are difficult. And we're going to talk to 2 experts, and it's 2 moms who have talked to their kids about really hard stuff. And they are Beth Peery, who you just saw a second ago, and Bethany Robertson. And these are 2 of my very, very, very good friends. I'm so happy to have you guys on here tonight. Bethany is the Kids Club director at Oakley, and she is the mom of 5. And she likes to kayak. Beth Peery is the mom of 3, and she's an adoptive mom. And what's Bethy? And Beth doesn't like guacamole, but we're still best friends. Go figure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So welcome, you guys. Good to have you here tonight. Thanks. Good to have you in my home. And why don't we get started by, both of you have had to walk your kids through really challenging situations. So why don't you start and just tell us a little bit about that?
So my kids are older now. They are, 2 of them are married and one of them is 26. And so we've walked through a lot of hard things together over the years, including when they were younger, things like losing grandparents, difficult friendships, and even moving. And so hopefully that set them up. Setting a good environment for them and kind of teaching them, set them up to receive the very difficult news that came later, which was that I had cancer. And my husband did all the heavy lifting on that news. And so he shared with them, he's a saint, he's a rock. And that was a really tough time. But hopefully they had been taught some coping skills, and hopefully they were able to receive it better because they were very connected to my husband. And we had grown up together doing hard things.
Great. Thanks, Beth. And Bethany, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. So my kids are a little bit younger. They're currently 10, 8, 6, 4, and 4. And 3 years ago, so back all those ages up, 3 years, my husband died in his sleep. So I found out in the middle of the night that he had passed away and had a few hours to figure out how to share that with my kids. So that was our hard. And I wish that we had had some of Beth's preparation, because I just wasn't quite there for how to share such difficult news with them yet.
Well, thank you. I know that having been with both of you when you went through those things, I just want to thank you for coming on tonight and being willing to be vulnerable and in some ways even reliving some of that. And if you're tuning in, our kids deal with all kinds of hard stuff. It might be friend hurts their feeling, they moved from their favorite house. And Beth and Bethany, even though the things that they've experienced, cancer and talking to their kids about a death of a parent is really hard, but so many of the things that they've learned are applicable to a wide range of difficult situations. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask Beth and Bethany, go ahead and put those in the comments and we will get to those. And in the meantime, Beth, so you talked about you prepared your kids for when you had cancer and, had to talk about that. What are some things that we can do to prepare our kids for the hard things that are inevitably going to happen in their life?
Yeah, so I think we can help kids develop good coping skills by modeling and teaching and kind of guiding them through that. So when my kids were younger, I taught them to say, "Can I talk to you in private?" If they were having a difficult time, and usually that was with a friend, and you don't want them to say anything in front of the friend. And so I taught them to say that. So one day, my husband and I were going to share some news with my son. My husband was retiring from the Marine Corps after 20 years, and we were moving from California to Ohio, and we were trying to find the right time to tell the kids. And so we were going to tell my son Ryan when he first got home from school. And as soon as he got home, he walked in the door. He said, "Mom, can I talk to you in private?" And so we went upstairs, and clearly he was feeling a little insecure. Probably something happened at school. I don't know what. And he said, "Mom, can we live in this house? And can I live with you forever?" And so I knew this wasn't the right time to share. He probably was hungry and thirsty, because kids need food and water every 2 hours to be at their best. And he was feeling a little insecure. So he needed a better environment in order for me to share that bad news. That would not have been the right time. We can't always choose when to share bad news, but when you can, it's a good idea to set the environment. And my daughter was completely different. She was very emotional. There might be a lot of tears involved. And we always knew not to bring anything difficult up after 9:30 or 10 at night, because it was going to be a lot harder conversation, because she was so tired, because sleep deprivation definitely kills your coping skills. And I even warned her husband about that before they got married. I think he appreciated that.
I'm sure John appreciated that. So John knows that Aaron needs to be well rested. That's really helpful. And Beth, I think as parents, if we're going to talk to our kids about something that's hard, we want to plan it out. But then we also have, what you're saying is, like with Ryan, you have to be flexible.
Yes.
Sometimes our plans change. Bethany, I know you and I have talked, and you've had a number of, this isn't something that just happened and you had a conversation with your kids. You have had many conversations over the past couple years. And what have you learned from that? Like when we're talking to our kids about difficult things, what are some things that you've learned that we might benefit from too?
Gosh, there are a lot of ways that we want to protect our kids, because we love them so much. We know that their hearts are sensitive. We're thinking about them as we share news. But the most helpful thing that I found was to be clear and truthful right away. I know that kids are really concrete thinkers, especially the little guys that I was sharing the hard news with. So I didn't say things like, "We've lost your dad," and have them looking outside the house for him or anything like that. Like, just a very direct, "Guys, dad died last night and now he's in heaven and we're not going to see him anymore." That was hard news to share, but I wanted to be clear so they knew what was happening. I wanted to tell the truth. I didn't want to wait. I wanted to be age appropriate. So the way that I shared that news with my kids might not be the way I would share with a 13-year-old. And I also wanted to personalize it to each kid. I don't know why or how or what wonderful circumstance happened this way, but each kid woke up one at a time. So I got to think about how I wanted to message to each kiddo. And even still, gosh, like the same principles applied to my kids' school changing, whether they were going to be in person or virtual. I still needed to use all those same tools and skills, and keep that in mind as I shared that news with them. Each of them reacted a different way. So hard news, that still works, from the big to what I did last week.
Yeah. And I got to see your kids respond in different ways. And what I saw you doing is you gave them space to respond in whatever way that they respond, because their feelings were their feelings. And I remember that afternoon where one would come dancing and excited about the new Magna tiles that just arrived. and then another was really sad, and you let them be that. And I just want to say too, you're absolutely right. We have to be truthful, and part of being truthful too is showing our own emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to think about, gosh, is it okay for my kids to see me cry? Is it okay for them to see me be sad and not just be this strong person who's walking them through things? Like, absolutely. Like, our kids need to see us react in a whole bunch of different ways. And sometimes I would tell them, like, guys, mom's a person too. Like, I have sad feelings and angry feelings and happy feelings. Like, you get to see it happening right now.
Right. Yeah, that's good. And Liz Fig, she just commented about creating space for the reactions. And Liz too has had to walk with her kids through some hard stuff. So thanks, Liz. We really appreciate your perspective too. So we want our kids to be resilient, right? Because they're going to be confronted and they're going to have to walk through difficult situations and challenging relationships. So I'd love to hear from the two of you. What can we do as parents to help our kids be more resilient?
I can take that. I think it's important to create a comfortable environment and know how your kids are going to respond. So for my son, obviously, going up to his bedroom was a safe place for him to talk. He felt good there. He felt a sense of belonging at home. He's always been more of a homebody, so sharing news with him at home is a good idea. Another kid might want to take a walk in the park. So whatever's most comfortable for them, and then also knowing how they're going to respond. My son would have wanted time to process. He's an introvert, and he would have wanted to probably be alone for a while, and I would want to follow up later. My daughter would want to talk about it right then, and I would need to be a very good listener. And we probably would increase nurturing at that point because she would need that in the moment and during that hard time, and then follow up later as well. And then interestingly, my youngest daughter, who had only been with us for 9 months when I was diagnosed with cancer, her responses are more fear-based, which is very normal for a kid who comes into your home later through adoption. And she's awesome because when I was in the hospital, my husband, my whole family was there. We were watching a movie, and this was just 2 or 3 days after surgery. So I wasn't really doing that well, but we were spending time together, and something happened. And I said, guys, I just need you to leave the room for a minute. And so my husband took the kids out, and he told me later that Zhenya said, Dad, we are 14, 16, and 18, and you need to tell us what's going on. Now, they already knew about the cancer. We had shared that. But older kids do not like to be in the dark. They like truth. They like clarity. And so he needed to explain to them what was going on with my body. And her response was more frustration and anger. And she needed that truth in order to settle and to manage what was going on. She needed to know that there wasn't anything critical right then. And so it was really important for him to be very truthful with her.
That's good. Thank you, Beth.
Mm-hmm.
I love all of that. And with my kids, I remember thinking that night, what are the exact right words to say? I don't know if they could tell you the exact words that I used. They can tell you all of the things that happened within that next day, that next week. They still talk about some of those months where people came and took them to karate, or people brought meals, or Kim came over to play Guess What This Is. It's a really strange game. I remember Kim. That's what they remember, though. Building resilience for them looked like support for a really long time. It wasn't just that one moment and what do we do that day. It was walking that out for weeks and months, and really even still today, continuing to support them when they have those hard feelings.
Yeah, and you talked about the community around you. You know, one of the attributes of a kid who's resilient is that they have community around them. And I saw both of you invite people in to do all kinds of different things. And that's not just a benefit to you, that's a benefit to your kids, because they saw how others could help them. And then I believe that through that, they were more likely to ask for help. So well done on that.
I would
Yeah.
also say, Kim, that's really important. There are going to be so many times when you are sharing hard news, but you are not the one that can be with them for continued conversations. And it's important to have community around you that can help you do that, that trusted people in their lives that they can go to.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think too, I'm thinking about Beth, the day you had your cancer surgery, and the news was actually not what we hoped from the doctors that day. So it was a hard day. And Zhenya had something that night that she was really, really looking forward to. And it is okay in the midst of the hard stuff to let them do the normal stuff. I remember I drove her to the airport to meet a friend that was coming into town, and that's what she needed. So being in touch with your kid, I mean, you were in touch with your kid. I remember saying, what should I do? And you said, well, drive her to the airport, Kim. Sometimes they need to do the normal, typical stuff. We've got a question from Abby. Is there one coping skill you think is the most important to teach your kids? And what coping skill do you think is the hardest? So what's the most important and what's the hardest coping skill to teach?
For my kids so far, so I will let you know, Abby, how this turns out long term. It's having the emotional intelligence to name their feelings. When they can name what they're feeling, it's so much easier to talk it out. So getting them to a point where they can identify a feeling and what they might need to do about it, or even just that they could identify it enough to talk about it, has been huge for my kids.
I think probably, I hope my daughter doesn't mind me sharing this story, but she understood that she needed sleep and that she was better if she had sleep. And her then boyfriend wanted to talk to her about their relationship. And she said, not a good idea tonight. I'm just too tired. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I'm John, I might be crushed. But she just knew it wasn't the right time, even though they had this great relationship. So I think she learned to set herself up for success by making sure that her body was taken care of, and she was doing self-care, really meeting her own needs so that she was at her best.
Right. Yeah, I think when we're under pressure, a lot of times that's when we best learn like how we're built and what we need. We have a good question from John where he said, how do your relationship look different now with your kids after these hard times?
Oh my gosh, so much closer. I mean, when you go through hard times, you not only grow closer to each other, you grow closer to God. And I would not want to, like, if you said, would you go back and not want cancer again? Yeah, I wouldn't want some of the lasting effects on my body, but I definitely learned and grew and would not want to be living with my family without those lessons we learned, because we're all stronger and more connected by walking through it together.
Yes.
Yeah, that's Beth, I like what you said about, I don't know that, I wouldn't necessarily go through it again, but for us, it was a really defining before and after. And honestly, in 2020, everyone right now has a before and after, before COVID and after COVID, if nothing else. And those befores and those afters, they really do change us. And I don't know, I mean, my kids are so little. I don't know what they would have been like had there not been a tragedy in their early lives. But I can say that they are warm and compassionate. And my 10-year-old tonight was like, Mom, I just so appreciate how you give us just hot, fresh dinner every night. I don't know how many 10-year-olds say that, but I feel like that's unique. So I see the good, and I don't know how much of it came from that hard time, but yeah, our after is still really good.
Well, and I think as followers of Jesus, the Bible says that he's going to work for good towards those who love him. And I don't believe that he causes these things to happen. But when these hard things happen, there are good things that come out of it. I mean, I know that we're closer to each other. I mean, our friendships are much deeper because of experiencing what we experience together. And I think in these hard times, what I saw you guys do is, especially like Beth, with your, initial, after the surgery, you still had hope.
Mm-hmm.
You had faith and you had hope. And for your kids to see you go through that and still have hope, and your faith still be strong and you trusted in God, then when they have things that happen, they can look to you as a role model.
I hope I modeled that well. It's tough in the midst of it, but God blessed me with a peace. That wasn't something I earned or did on my own, but Romans 5:3 was my verse, and it talks about how you go through hardships and it leads to strength and hope. And that still today is my favorite verse. And I hope that my kids grew through that. And someday when I'm gone and they're going through something tough, they'll remember that. I'm sure there are times I did it poorly too. So I would just pray that that is further and further back in their mind, and the times I did it well are more memorable.
Right. Abby is just saying that it's painful as a parent to think about your kids having to process hard things with other people who aren't you, but that sure does highlight the importance of community. And I know for both of you, I don't know if I'm going to go ahead and say it. Everybody that offers to do things with your kids might not be the best person for your kid. So how did you guys navigate that? Like determining who was going to be a safe place for your kid and who wasn't?
I don't know if my way is funny, but I think it's funny now. One of my closest friends helped to put all of the requests into an order, and she and I worked together to put them in lists of people who might help around the house sometimes, might have these certain skills, which people I trusted to drive my kids around, and which people I trusted, like helping put them to bed, like who could be in our intimate circle. And so I literally managed it with spreadsheets, which, if you know me, that's pretty on brand.
Yeah, it was a pretty complex spreadsheet. And I just want to say to people who might be listening and say, oh, wait a minute, I wanted to tuck in Bethany's kids and I didn't get called to do it. This is not about you. This is about Bethany's kids and Beth's kids and what's best for them. And you might be an awesome, amazing, wonderful person, but maybe you simply didn't have the relational equity that somebody else did. So please don't be hurt by that.
Oh, good call out. And I might not have had the bandwidth to include more people than I did. Honestly, it was a hard and intimate space to be in. Bedtime is when a lot of the tears and the feelings come out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Also, I think what you pointed out earlier, Bethany, was that your kids are younger, so you haven't gone through all the stuff yet. But I was thinking about how my kids were older and had friendships. They had been in youth groups at church. And so they had people that were safe spaces. And I would say my daughter especially had some good friends that she could go to. And I remember during one hard time, she actually planned to get together with her friends at 11 or midnight because she needed them. And that's the only time they could get together. And so I was really grateful that she had those people to go to, and a neighbor where she could just walk out the back door and go over, and she would be welcomed. And I trusted what they were going to say because I knew I knew them well. And that was very comforting.
You both have talked about the importance of community in this. Some of our parents might be watching and think, I don't have any idea who I would get to help me put my kids to bed, or I don't know who I would send my kid to go walk to. What are some things that parents can do now? Because regardless of whether you encounter something like both of you guys have had, your kids still need other people other than their parents to be building into them and speaking truth to them and encouraging them. So what can parents do now to build up the community around their kids?
One thing, we have a show coming up, a Parent Timeout, where we're going to have somebody sharing about the importance of a guide in your life, the importance of having people in your life who you trust and are a safe place. And, it's a broken world. And so you just never know. Obviously, Bethany completely understands this, that you never know when somebody is going to be gone or not available to you. And so it's really good to start early. And I would say that's going to be a great show for lots of tips. But I think starting young with who are the coaches that you trust? Who do you trust? Volunteers in Kids Club. Take your kids to Kids Club. It's a great place for them to be built into by people who are safe and trusted. And it just grows from there as they get older. And if they're in other events like Girl Scouts and dance and things like that, other moms. But I would say work hard to create a community, get into a small group, do the things you can do so that you're prepared when you need help.
Yeah, that's very important.
My gosh, one of my son's third grade Kids Club volunteers, Kenneth, took him out for chicken wings to tell him how proud he was of him and how much he had grown that year. Not everyone, maybe not everyone gets to that level of relationship, but it was really beautiful. And the other piece that I think is key for that is just enough vulnerability. If you can share some of the small struggles, if you can share maybe even just how hard it is to put hot dinner on the table every night with other people who are in your life, that vulnerability leads to more connection over time.
And it's hard to be vulnerable because we're trying to show the world that we have our act together all the time. And I just got to say to both of you, Beth and Bethany, it was such an honor for me to, I don't want to cry. When you share with somebody the deepest what's going on in your life, that is not a burden on somebody else. So if you're watching and you've got something you need to process and you think I don't want to burden somebody, just know that that's an honor. That's an honor for somebody to trust you enough to ask you to walk alongside them. And because I know one of the things you want to talk about, Bethany, why don't you talk about being brave and the importance of being brave in the midst of this?
Yeah. Oh gosh. So being brave with the other people in my life was part of it, but being brave and telling the kids, I was praying that night, God, how am I going to tell the kids and how am I going to pay my mortgage? Those were my two questions. And even so, even though I got to have some courage that one time, it's still hard every time. It's hard to share disappointment with your kids and to just really it is. It's reaching in and knowing I'm their parent. I am the one who gets to be in this role in their lives. And I need to have the courage and the bravery to just go through with it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if you can be authentic and you can show them how much you love them, then that's what they're looking for.
Absolutely. You guys, we're approaching the end of our time. So I'd love to know, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with our parents who are watching?
One thing I thought of in the midst of talking about community, it's important in the midst of crisis to try to avoid little mini traumas that might happen because of it. And so I think part of it is being discerning about the people you let in, like Bethany said. It's not that you can't let everybody in, but you also have to be very careful and make sure that your kids are in a safe space. And so I think about what Beth Guckenberger talks about, this house, and you have the people you really trust and they're allowed in the house. And then you have people that you also trust with your story. And this might be teachers and people who love your kids or who are people of that will create a safe space for them. And those might be on the front porch. And then you have some people that are out there, maybe some fringe neighbors that don't know you as well, or people who you don't necessarily trust. And you do need to protect your children, especially when they're younger. And so if you think about that house analogy, I think it's just really important to be sure that your kids have those safe spaces, because the safer they feel, the better their coping skills will be, and the better they'll respond to trauma and crisis, and even just smaller hard things when you have to do it.
Right, right. That's very good. Yeah. What is it? I know it's front porch and front yard friends. Who are the friends that are in the house? What do you call those?
It's like the people you really trust. Like you'd leave your kids with them. You'd leave the house and leave them in your house with your kids. So that might be your parents. It could be. It might not be.
Yeah, I thought there was a name like living room friends. I can't remember. We'll find that out, and we'll put that on here. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bethany, any closing thoughts?
Gosh, I don't know, because I really do. I still get scared every time. So really my closing thoughts are that the hard things, they keep coming and the good things keep coming too. So, gosh, you guys have been on it with your Bible verses, but weep with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice. Like, give your kids a chance to do both of those with you.
That's very good. And I would say too, something that I saw in both of you, and you did it prior to, prior to what happened. And that is, you built a foundation of trusting God. You built a foundation of going to the Lord in prayer, even with your little bit. Petra was she 2?
She was 1.
Oh my gosh. Okay. And I think as far as preparing our kids, because it's not protecting and shielding. I mean, we need to prepare them. And I think starting to lay that foundation in the midst of a world where just things change all the time. And we can't really promise anything other than God will always be there. We can trust God. God has a plan for our future. Yeah. So buy a Jesus Storybook Bible if your kids are little and start reading with them and praying with them, and get your community. If you're, I just can't say enough. If you're on this call tonight and you feel alone, like Bethany said, be brave and reach out to somebody, and it's going to benefit not just you. It's going to show your kids that life is better in community and that we can ask for help. And if that's the main thing our kids learn from us, is that you can ask other people for help, that's a really, really good thing. So Beth and Bethany, thank you so much. Next week, and Beth is usually behind the screen. She's usually the one sending me messages saying you have something on your nose or whatever. So Beth will be back in the back next week. And we're going to have Vicki Diller. She's community pastor of Crossroads Columbus. She's also an adoptive mom, a foster mom, and a working mom. So she's just going to talk to us about all kinds of things related to that. So we hope that you join us next week at 8:30. And I just want to say a prayer over those who are watching. God, as parents, I just pray that we are connected to you. And I pray that we have the courage to know when to ask for help. And I pray for everybody watching that if they don't have it now, that even tonight, that just the seeds of community start to be planted and grow around them. And I just thank you. I thank you for my friendship with Beth and Bethany. And I pray for everybody to have people that they can call in the middle of the night, no matter what's going on. Amen. Thanks for tuning in, Beth and Bethany. I'll see you tomorrow night at my house, for real.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night, everybody.